Welcome to another tranquil journey through time and culture, where we explore the captivating history of Puerto Rico. Nestled in the northeastern Caribbean Sea, this beautiful island has a rich and complex past that spans thousands of years and multiple civilizations. The story of Puerto Rico begins long before it acquired its current name, with indigenous peoples who called this tropical paradise their home. As we settle in for this historical exploration, let your mind wander through the lush landscapes and azure waters that have witnessed countless chapters of human experience. The island known today as Puerto Rico was originally inhabited by the Taíno people, who called their beloved homeland Boriken, or Boriken, meaning Land of the Brave Lord. These indigenous inhabitants created thriving communities across the island, developing sophisticated agricultural systems and rich cultural traditions. Their society was organized into communities led by caciques or chiefs, who governed with the council of spiritual leaders called behiques. The Taíno people lived in harmony with their natural surroundings, cultivating crops such as cassava, sweet potatoes, and corn, while also fishing in the abundant waters surrounding their island home. The peaceful existence of the Taíno would be forever altered in November 1493, when Christopher Columbus arrived on the shores of Boriken during his second voyage to the Americas. Columbus claimed the island for Spain and renamed it San Juan Bautista in honor of St. John the Baptist. The name Puerto Rico, meaning rich port, was originally given to the main harbor, but eventually became applied to the entire island, while the capital city took the name San Juan. This encounter marked the beginning of Spanish colonization that would dramatically transform the island's demographic, cultural, and political landscape. The Spanish quickly established settlements and began exploiting the island's resources and indigenous labor. Within a few decades of Spanish arrival, the Taíno population was decimated by disease, warfare, and harsh treatment under the encomienda system, which essentially enslaved them. To work for Spanish colonizers, the island became strategically important for the Spanish Empire, as it served as a key defensive outpost guarding the entrance to the Caribbean and protecting Spanish treasure fleets. During the early colonial period, Puerto Rico developed under the leadership of figures like Juan Ponce de León, who arrived in 1508 and became the island's first governor. The Spanish constructed impressive fortifications, including El Morro and La Fortaleza in San Juan, some of which still stand today as testaments to colonial military architecture. These massive stone structures were designed to protect the island from rival European powers and pirates who frequently targeted Spanish possessions in the Caribbean. As the indigenous population declined, the Spanish began importing enslaved Africans to work on plantations, adding another cultural dimension to Puerto Rico's developing identity. The fusion of Taíno, Spanish, and African influences created the foundations of Puerto Rican culture as we know it today, shaping everything from language and religion to music, cuisine, and art. For over 4 centuries, Puerto Rico remained under Spanish control, evolving from a military outpost to a colonial society with its own distinct characteristics. The island experienced periods of economic growth, particularly in the cultivation of sugar, coffee, and tobacco, which became important exports. Despite its strategic importance, Puerto Rico often received less attention from Spain than other colonies like Cuba or Mexico, which were considered more valuable. This relative neglect allowed for the development of a unique Puerto Rican identity and culture that, while certainly Spanish in many aspects, evolved its own distinctive characteristics. Throughout the Spanish colonial period, the island faced numerous challenges, including attacks from rival European powers, economic fluctuations, and natural disasters such as hurricanes that periodically devastated the island's infrastructure and agriculture. By the late 19th century, movements for greater autonomy or independence began to emerge in Puerto Rico, inspired by similar developments throughout Latin America. The island briefly gained autonomy from Spain in 1897, but this political arrangement would be short-lived due to international events beyond Puerto Rico's control. The outbreak of the Spanish-American War in 1898 would dramatically alter Puerto Rico's trajectory, setting the stage for a new era under American influence. This conflict would mark the end of Spanish sovereignty over the island and the beginning of a complex relationship with the United States that continues to shape Puerto Rican politics, economy, and identity to this day. As Spain's once mighty empire continued to crumble across the globe, Puerto Rico stood at the threshold of a new chapter in its history, one that would bring both opportunities and challenges. The Spanish-American War of 1898 marked a pivotal, turning point in Puerto Rico's history, transforming the island from a Spanish colony to an American possession almost overnight. American troops landed in Puerto Rico on July 25, 1898, meeting relatively little resistance as they advanced across the island. Many Puerto Ricans initially welcomed the American forces, hoping that the change in sovereignty might bring greater freedoms and economic opportunities. The war concluded with the Treaty of Paris, signed on December 10, 1898, which officially ceded Puerto Rico, along with Guam and the Philippines, to the United States. Cuba, which had been fighting for independence from Spain, was granted nominal independence but remained under significant American influence. This transfer of power occurred without any meaningful consultation with the Puerto Rican people, who suddenly found themselves subjects of a new colonial power with a different language, legal system, and cultural traditions. The early years of American rule brought significant changes to Puerto Rico's governance and society. Under the Foraker Act of 1900, a civil government was established, but Puerto Ricans had limited participation in their own governance. The governor and key officials were appointed by the U.S. president, and Puerto Rico was designated as an unincorporated territory, a status that placed it in a kind of political limbo, neither a state nor an independent nation. The Jones Act of 1917 granted U.S. citizenship to Puerto Ricans, a development that coincided with America's entry into World War I and allowed Puerto Ricans to be drafted into the U.S. military. However, this citizenship came with limitations, as Puerto Ricans residing on the island could not vote in presidential elections and had no voting representation in Congress. The exact motivations behind extending citizenship at this particular moment have been debated by historians, with some suggesting it was primarily driven by military considerations rather than a genuine desire to incorporate Puerto Rico more fully into the American political system. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, Puerto Rico experienced dramatic economic and social transformations under American influence. The island's economy shifted from a primarily agricultural base, dominated by sugar production, toward increasing industrialization. This economic restructuring brought both benefits and challenges. While certain metrics of development improved, such as infrastructure, education, and healthcare, Puerto Rico also experienced cultural dislocations and economic dependencies that persist to this day. The use of English was promoted in schools, sometimes at the expense of Spanish, creating tensions around language and identity that continue to resonate in contemporary Puerto Rican society. American companies gained significant control over key sectors of the island's economy, often extracting wealth while leaving limited benefits for local communities. These economic patterns established during this period would contribute to long-term structural challenges that still affect Puerto Rico's development. Political movements of various stripes emerged in response to American rule, ranging from those advocating for statehood to those demanding complete independence. Some leaders sought a middle path, working for greater autonomy within the American political system. Luis Muñoz Marín, who would become Puerto Rico's first democratically elected governor, initially supported independence, but later championed the Commonwealth status that Puerto Rico would eventually adopt. In 1948, Puerto Ricans were allowed to elect their own governor for the first time, and Muñoz Marín won this historic election. Under his leadership, Operation Bootstrap was launched, an ambitious economic development program that sought to transform Puerto Rico from an agricultural economy to an industrial one. While this initiative brought certain economic gains, it also created new forms of dependency and did not resolve the fundamental questions about Puerto Rico's political status. The establishment of Commonwealth status in 1952 represented a significant evolution in Puerto Rico's relationship with the United States, but it did not resolve the underlying questions about the island's ultimate political destiny. Under this arrangement, Puerto Rico gained greater control over internal affairs while remaining subject to federal laws and lacking full representation in Washington. The Commonwealth formula, known in Spanish as Estado Libre Asociado, literally, free associated state, has been the subject of ongoing debate and multiple status referendums over the decades. Puerto Ricans have repeatedly gone to the polls to express their preferences among the options of statehood, independence, or some form of enhanced Commonwealth status, but none of these consultations has led to definitive changes in the island's political arrangement with the United States. The ambiguous nature of Puerto Rico's political status continues to shape many aspects of life on the island, from economic development to cultural identity and beyond. Puerto Rico's cultural identity has evolved in complex and fascinating ways throughout its history, reflecting the diverse influences that have shaped the island. The blending of Taíno, Spanish, African, and American elements has created a rich cultural tapestry, evident in Puerto Rico's music, art, literature, cuisine, and religious practices. Despite centuries of colonial rule, first by Spain and then by the United States, Puerto Ricans have maintained a strong sense of national identity that distinguishes them from both their Spanish heritage and American citizenship. This cultural resilience is remarkable given the significant pressures toward assimilation that have existed throughout Puerto Rico's history. Today, Puerto Ricans continue to celebrate and preserve their unique cultural traditions, while also engaging with global influences in an increasingly interconnected world. The economic challenges facing Puerto Rico in recent decades have had profound impacts on the island's society and future prospects. By the early 21st century, Puerto Rico was struggling with high levels of public debt, diminishing economic opportunities, and a declining population as many Puerto Ricans migrated to the mainland United States in search of better prospects. These challenges culminated in a debt crisis that led to the passage of PROMESA, Puerto Rico Oversight, Management and Economic Stability Act, in 2016, which established a financial oversight and management board with significant control over Puerto Rico's finances. Critics argue that this arrangement further undermines Puerto Rican self-governance, while proponents maintain it was necessary to address the island's fiscal problems. In 2017, Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, causing widespread destruction and highlighting the vulnerabilities created by the island's political status and economic difficulties. The hurricane and its aftermath became a powerful symbol of the complex relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States, raising questions about federal responsiveness to the needs of Puerto Ricans as American citizens. The story of Puerto Rico continues to unfold in the present day, with ongoing debates about status, recovery efforts, and future direction. Recent years have seen renewed discussions about Puerto Rico's political status, with increasing support for statehood among many Puerto Ricans. However, the path forward remains uncertain, as any status change would require action by the U.S. Congress, where the issue has not received sufficient priority to generate decisive movement. Meanwhile, Puerto Ricans continue to navigate the complexities of their unique identity, citizenship, and relationship with the United States. The resilience of Puerto Rican culture and society in the face of numerous historical challenges speaks to the strength and determination of the Puerto Rican people. From the earliest Taíno inhabitants to the diverse society of today, the island has been shaped by those who call it home, and their responses to both internal dynamics and external forces. As we conclude our historical journey through Puerto Rico's past, we can appreciate how this small island has experienced the broad sweep of Caribbean and American history in profound ways. From indigenous civilization to European colonization, from plantation economy to industrial development, from colonial subject to ambiguous political status, Puerto Rico's story encapsulates many of the key themes of modern world history. The question of Puerto Rico's ultimate political destiny remains open, awaiting resolution by future generations of Puerto Ricans and Americans. Whatever path is eventually chosen, it will build upon the rich and complex historical foundation that we have explored in this narrative. The island's past continues to shape its present, and will undoubtedly influence the choices available to Puerto Ricans as they determine their future. This history reminds us that even small places can have profound historical importance, connecting to broader patterns of global development while maintaining their own unique character and contributions to human experience.